Hello there. Today I want to talk about finding inspiration. This is not as Playdate specific as my other videos, but I thought it would be fun to talk about this anyway. This is a problem that I was often thinking about when I was developing the second game for the Playdate, which was The Fall of Magic Castle. The development of that game was much longer than I anticipated. I worked for over a year on that game, and there were a couple of surprises along the way. Not everything went according to plan. I found myself working on specific gameplay systems a bit later than I wanted to. For example, the combat system was done much later in the game. So in this video I want to talk about those moments where it's not about burnout, where it's not about finding a technical solution to a technical problem. It's more about ideation, more about gameplay systems, more about looking for inspiration on how to do a specific thing. You're working on a combat system and you want to make that combat system special, or maybe you want to base that combat system on another game that you really like and you feel like it would fit into your game. So in this video I want to talk about the kinds of sources of inspiration that worked for me when I was working on The Fall of Magic Castle, and what kind of questions they answered and what kind of inspiration I got from them. So the first thing I want to talk about is a book publisher. It's called Bitmap Books. I think they're based in the UK, and I've been a pretty big fan of their books for a long time, even before I started working on indie game development. One of my favorite things about Bitmap Books is just how many things you can find in terms of your gaming interests. Let's say that you're interested in a specific system or a specific genre or even a specific game, or just video game history in general. There should be something, if you like reading of course, there should be something that would satisfy your needs. And for me that was specifically two books: A Guide to Japanese Role-Playing Games and the CRPG book, A Guide to Computer Role-Playing Games, Expanded Edition. So both of those books are pretty encyclopedic. Not all of them are like that. Some of their books are more of a articles based or opinion based, but these two are a bit more like a proper encyclopedia with lots of information on the history of a specific genre, JRPGs and CRPGs respectively, and just a chronological turn of events where you can really dive into the evolution of the genre, of the origin of a certain genre, and then observe how it ebbed and flowed throughout the different eras of technology of gaming. And what I found particularly inspiring when I was going through those books was just the sheer scale of different gaming mechanics. Some of them were not so successful. Some of them were actually very successful and formed the basis of the next wave of games in that specific genre. Some of them were just very popular but at a specific point in time, and then they became more like a dead end for that specific technology or that specific genre. So reading through those two books, I found a ton of really cool ideas for how to make a specific system work in a specific scenario for the player, how to work with the constraints. That's also interesting, right? Because in the Playdate you've got so many different technological constraints on how you can present your games graphically, and how you can structure them around such a small screen and so few inputs. And that's why I found those books very creatively stimulating, if you will, especially in those early days when developers had to deal with constraints on their regular machines, because each PC was almost like a Playdate, or even worse maybe. So I really do recommend going, giving a chance to this kind of to these kinds of publications. It doesn't even have to specifically these books, just something that is written down, something that has a certain structure, because I think that you can get a pretty nice overview of a specific genre if you go all the way back to its roots and then follow the evolution of that genre. I think there is merit to that. There is some worth in that, and you can even try to do like a specific retro throwback to a mechanic that worked a long time ago but was never picked up since, not because it was bad or not because it wasn't popular, just because it was simply forgotten. And those kinds of books, those kinds of publications can really bring that to your attention and help you with leveraging those kinds of things. For me specifically, when I was looking at those kinds of games, I really like to check the soundtracks of those JRPGs, for example, and see how they made specific sounds work with such a reduced palette of sounds. How they communicated specific actions and events, like getting hit or specific magic spells. I found that very inspiring, and that was like a basis of what I was looking for when I was looking for my own sounds for my own music and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good things that can be extracted from such a good source of information. The next thing I want to talk about is just video channels, YouTube video channels. One of my favorite ones is Game Maker's Toolkit. It's pretty big, it's pretty popular. I guess there's a pretty big chance that you already know about this one. Again, it's not particularly specific to Playdate game development, but there is something about just talking about game design in general that might nudge you into the right direction. I really like Game Maker's Toolkit, not just for the for the informational side, but also for the presentation. I think it's always very well produced. It's just a pleasure to watch those kinds of videos. But there is, since the author of this channel also became a web developer, a game developer, and started making his own game, he then incorporated the wisdom from that into his very good videos. So I think that some of the topics I also talked about, like prototyping, like making a vertical slice, he has also videos on that. They're very well produced, and specific gameplay systems and specific genres are very well explained by him. So I just find it not just informative but also entertaining, which is a perfect mix if you're stuck on a creative problem and just want to relax a little bit, but maybe also get inspired at the same time. So I really like GMTK. A slightly different kind of inspiration came from Timothy Kane. He is the developer and main creative force behind Fallout, the first Fallout game. And I really like his videos because this guy has been in the industry for a really long time. I think he started somewhere like in the 80s or something like that, and he's still in the business. I don't like all of his videos. Some of them are quite personal, some of them talk about things that don't really interest me, but there are some about video game development that I find truly fascinating, when he talks from the position of someone who has been doing this his whole life, an old school programmer that knows those systems inside out, and when he talks about creating those gameplay systems, balancing those gameplay systems, that's when I find this kind of thinking, this kind of process, like very inspiring, but also something that I want to follow that kind of thinking. I want to see if I can also incorporate that kind of mental workflow into my own game. So there were a couple of moments when he talked about bugs, for example, that with complexity, there are always bugs that will come alongside with it, how to minimize certain things happening in your game, but how something just cannot be avoided. a little bit about testing, a little bit about prototyping, a little bit about designing reactive systems, a little bit about the more narrative-driven choices in games, and how this can also influence gameplay. So I really liked watching those videos, especially when I felt like very stuck about how to solve this narratively. How can I do something that looks cool with so little budget and so many technical constraints on the console. So I found Mr. Kane to be very helpful in those aspects. And then I also have 3 specific games that I want to showcase. 3 games that just surprised me in a way that I would have never anticipated. The first one comes specifically from the CRPG book. In the CRPG book, there's a section at the end of the book where they talk about books that are not from the American and European regions, but they focus on the Asian region. And this game that you can see on the screen right now is called Chinese Paladin. At least that's how it is being translated. I found at least 2 other translations. And this game was made by a studio in Taiwan in the mid-90s, if I recall correctly, and it was so beloved that their main gamings magazine had like a yearly ranking of the best games of all times, and that game stayed on that ranking for like 6 or 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. Like year after year after year, it was voted the best game ever. And like it was written that in that article in the book, mostly nobody knew about this book outside that region. In Europe and in the States, nobody knew about this game, and still not too many people know about this game. Nowadays it's a bit easier because you've got a translation. It's not a ROM hack, it's just like a translation that you can apply to the game and play it yourself. So I find this game really special. It has a good pixel art. It has stuff that you wouldn't expect from this kind of a game in that genre. But again, it was made in a different region with different expectations and with different ways of solving problems. So I found just playing that game really fun. With great music, with good dialogue, even though it was badly translated in some cases, it was still good dialogue. You could see the intent, the things that are happening on the screen throughout the game, the kind of boss battles that you have, the kind of things that you find, the companions that you form on the trip. I don't know, there was something that defied my expectations at all times when I was playing that game. And it was just a joy to be constantly surprised, to be constantly finding new maybe not mechanics, but new ways of presenting problems that would be solved very differently in an American game or in a European game or even in a Japanese RPG. Those things were just made slightly differently, and I can see why this game is so beloved these days. The next one that I played a bit more recently is Esoteric Ebb. And the thing about this game is that, well, if somebody has played Disco Elysium, then they know what I'm talking about. But I think it's always quite interesting to see a game that relies on one specific mechanic, and in this case it's just reading. You're just reading and you're just role-playing through selecting dialogue options. Well, obviously there are some other systems, like you can move around, you can pick objects, you have access to your inventory, but the main way of interacting with the world is not combat, it's text. Even if the text is describing a combat encounter, you're still dealing with text. And I found this to be very interesting to think about, very interesting to reason about, that you can strip yourself from the closest approximation of a combat, which is pushing buttons at specific intervals, and just decide to try to describe it instead, and to have that as your way of managing your gameplay. So both this game and Disco Elysium have been a massive influence for me when I was doing the Fall of Magic Castle. And by influence, I don't mean that my game is the same as those games. It's not about copying mechanics. It's not about doing things in the same way as those games do. It's more about just being presented with a different solution to a common problem, and then trying to think, so this is the way that they decided to do it. Let me try to apply the same kind of thinking of finding a different solution to a common problem to accommodate in my gameplay loop. It doesn't have to be text. It can be something different. It can be like a mini game or a genre change, even for a split second, just to prove a point or to wow the player or something like that. So I found both Disco Elysium and Esoteric Ebb to be fantastic sources of inspiration, but also fun. It's just a fun game, and it provides you with the kind of freedom that no amount of quadruple A graphics can. So that's always a good thing in my book. And the third game, this one, Katamari Damacy, was a fantastic way of just unblocking my brain, like especially if I've been coding for a couple of hours and I felt like, oh wow, okay, I still have this one problem to solve. I don't have the mental capacity to do it anymore. I don't want to think about it for a second, so let me just play Katamari Damacy for a moment. And if you don't know, it's just a game about rolling a ball and trying to make that ball as big as you can. The bigger the ball becomes, the more things that you can roll into it, because you can always roll things that are smaller than the ball itself, but it keeps growing. And to witness such a game where the whole gameplay loop revolves around just one mechanic, but implemented perfectly and executed just like in the best possible way, combined with music that's just completely insane. The level at which this music was produced is just insane. I don't know. For me, that this game was just a very good reminder of how gameplay is king, but also how a good idea needs to have good technical execution as well. Because what we're seeing on the screen, I don't know, it feels somewhat timeless. This kind of idea could be done today in 2026, and I feel like it would still feel fresh and feel novel, just because of how well executed it is, both on the gameplay side of things, but also on the technical level. This is a PS2 game. This was originally released on the PS2, and I don't know, it always boggles my mind that we're in this era of AAA games with ray tracing and whatnot, and then you boot up something from the PlayStation 2, and it just feels like it feels competitive in a way that many modern AAA games aren't. I don't know, the closest thing that comes to my mind is something like Tears of the Kingdom, and that feels technically very competent, like a game that could have been made more recently, because it would be difficult to do something like that on a technical level in the past. I just like those kinds of games, and I feel like we don't have enough of them, but that's a different topic. So so basically, those were my ways of finding inspiration. The main one is always playing other games and having fun, enjoying them, not treating them like a case study, but more like trying to just go by feel and just playing a game that makes you think that, oh, this is fun. I would and then starting to ask questions like, why is it fun? Is it just the mechanics? Is it the combination of mechanics and graphics and the narrative, or is it just the narrative? Is it the idea behind all of this? All is it the novelty of this whole thing? So yeah, playing those specific video games, the good ones, the ones that solve specific problems in a very unusual way. That's always a good thing. Reading through publications, books, articles, even I think that brings another kind of perspective, and also some YouTube channels I find very informative and very well produced as well. It's YouTube, so for many people it's their source of income. So I can imagine why they put so much energy into making good, well-produced video documentaries, because it's their livelihood. So it makes sense that they look so good. There's just so much information out there, but I think that some of those YouTubers, some of those YouTube channels are really well made, and can really present whole, like a whole topic can be presented in a very attractive way. So those channels like GMTK, Tim Kaine, I also think there's merit in watching those kinds of channels when you're working on your own thing and trying to look for different ways of solving a specific creative problem. So that's it. That's all for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.